So similar meaning, this one is very similar to synonyms, as you can assume, but it's just in a different format, and you can get this type of question in your exam coming up. So what information are you looking for here? In this type of question, you'll encounter two sets of word pairs enclosed in brackets. So again, whenever you're reading the instructions, just quickly look down at the example to compare what the instructions are trying to tell you. So the two sets that they're talking about is set 1 and set 2. You can see them here. It says each of the two sets, they have word pairs, so you can see there is a pair of words in here: cover and screen, color and hue. And then it says alongside 5 individual words, so these are the individual words, so these are going to be our options, provided as potential answers. Yeah, this means our answer options basically. So these might be labeled A, B, C, D, E, Your task is to identify the word among the 5 options that shares a meaningful connection or similarity with both sets of word pairs. So that's a lot of words in one go. But basically what it's saying here is identify the word that is in the 5 options that shares a meaningful connection with both sets of words. So a meaningful connection meaning sort of similar or some sort of logical relationship there, and obviously it says both sets of words, so one of these words has to sort of fit in or make sense with both of these sets. So if we just have a look at these, so cover, screen, color, hue, obviously this side sort of makes sense on its own and this side makes sense on its own, so we'll need a word that works for both of them. So I'm looking for something that matches to color or hue. Rhyme, shine, place, shade, wealth. None of these match apart from shade, because you could say a shade of green is a type of color or something like that, so shade sort of matches with this. And then you can see cover, screen, well, none of them match again apart from shade, because if you're covering something, maybe you're shading it. Screening something, the same thing. That way you get shade as the best word to match both of these, whereas the rest of them don't really. We can have a look at what it's saying down here. Yeah, it's basically said the same thing. So it said if you shade something, you're covering it or screening it, and then also if you're having a shade of a color or a hue, it sort of matches as well. And again, what it does here is it just checks the other ones, such as wealth and place and shine and grime, and checks if they match, and basically they don't, so we end up with this answer. So let's get on with the practice questions. There are 10 of them. We can actually probably get through all of them. Yeah, so lift and raise, these two, what I'm going to do is I'm going to immediately look for something that might match the first set without looking at the second. So rope, hook, crane, bird, flock. I can already cancel out quite a few from here, because a bird wouldn't really work with lift and raise, flock doesn't really work, hook doesn't really work. A rope might, because you can use a rope to lift someone, but and a crane might as well, because you can use a crane to raise someone. If we look at heron and stork, these are both types of birds, and therefore the only one that will match out of these two, rope isn't a type of bird but a crane is, so I'd go with crane because you can use it to lift and raise, and you can also, it's also a type of bird which matches into this set. So question 2, thwart, impede. Alright, I'm just gonna look at this first set. So thwart, if you're thwarting someone, you're sort of stopping them. Impeding is the same thing. So if we cross out anything that doesn't match with that, boiler doesn't work, food doesn't work, foil doesn't work. Actually, foil does work because you can foil someone's plans, meaning you're ruining their plans. Same thing as thwarting their plans. So we're left with 2 of them that could work. And if we look at this one, a sheet and wrapper, any of them that match. Well, prevent isn't a type of sheet or wrapper, but foil is. So there we go, we've got one that matches both of them. And if you missed it, if you missed foil, you might have been left with just prevent, and then you can quickly look at this and see that prevent doesn't really work against sheet and wrapper, so you have to try again, right? You have to have a look again, and you can try the same thing that I did from the start, but just do it from the right to the left. So ignore this side, just look for sheet and wrapper, see which ones can match that. So prevent doesn't work, boiler doesn't work, food doesn't work, attend doesn't work. Foil does work. So you know foil matches to this, and you know prevent matches to this. Then you sort of need to know you sort of do need some understanding of the word foil that matches this, but you could sort of come to an educated guess that foil is more likely to mean that than prevent meaning that. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, question 3. Dot, spot. Alright, see if there's anything on here that matches that. So pole doesn't really work. A point does work if you're a point on a piece of paper. Pivot, I'm not too sure about that. East and defend really don't work. Point, okay, direct and finger, that definitely works if you're pointing someone or you're directing them to the right place, that works. So this, in my opinion, is the best way to go about these questions, is just look at one set, so sort of ignore this for now, look at one set, and then just cross out and come to a conclusion after that. So cohort or fellow, a cohort is like a group of people, it's going to be something like that. So associate and fellow, these sort of match, and a fellow is like a person that you like, or a friend. Attend, not too sure about that one. Find, definitely not. Peer, okay, peer does work actually, because you can be someone's peer, or you can be in someone's peer group, meaning you're basically their age or in their group, or sort of their friends. So your peer group is the people in your school, in your class, they're your peers. Watch definitely doesn't work. Alright, so we're left with a few here, I think just 2. Now just have a look at which ones could match that, and associate definitely doesn't work, but peer does, because you can peer into someone, peer through a window, something like that. So question 5, again do the same thing, ignore it and then look at first set. Calibrate, graduate. So these two are like when you're setting up a piece of equipment. So if you're graduating an equipment or calibrating it, sort of the meaning. So mark would sort of be similar to that. Scale again is sort of similar to that. Climb and mountain are definitely not. Balance is again similar to it. So these are sort of, if you can look these words up if you don't particularly understand them, but for example if you're in a science lab you might be using a graduated scale, a graduated flask or something like that, or you might be calibrating something. So these all sort of work. If we look at the second set, we'll be able to find what our answer is. So lamella, that's a difficult word, so that's like a fish gill. And astute, which I don't particularly know what means, which I don't actually know what it means, but I know what lamella is. It's sort of like on the outside of a fish gill, and I can assume astute is going to be something similar to that, something on an animal, some sort of scale on the reptile, something like that, right? And from that you can actually get that balance and mark definitely don't work, whereas scale would be the closest, because I mean if we just put up the definition of scoot actually now, you can see here that it's a thickened, horny or bony plate on a turtle's shell. Again, if you're talking about like maybe a turtle's scales or something like that, or a crocodile scales, that's like very close to it, and that's probably why it would match the closest. And the reason why I went with that was because I knew what lamella meant, and that sort of let me take a guess at what scute would mean. But if you don't know what those words mean, you just have to take an educated guess there and then look it up after. So I'll skip to question 8 and then question 10, and then we'll end off there. So just, impartial, pretty good looking. So if someone is just or impartial, let's have a look. Unbiased is definitely one that works. Instantly and now don't match. Fair matches because you're being fair or just. Beautiful doesn't. Now if we compare it to the second set, fair is the only one that would match. So if someone is fair looking, it means that they're pretty, or they're good looking as well, whereas you can't really be unbiased. I mean unbiased doesn't really match to this, so